Uh. Uh. Okay. Flower power hour, now or never. I was in the shower, sounding clever. Pounding several, Ryan Ices, plowing snow.
No Jeremy Renner.
Crush a pedal underfoot like Hawkeye, throwing into her locker like a small guy. Post Malone Sunflower, he's a tall guy, 6'2". I looked it up online.
Knockout roses, pocket posies, socks and shoes upon my toesies,
Run the hotel, call me Mosby, run the gym like Pam McCoby,
Goddamn, bro, what in tarnation is happening to our nation? Too much for gas at the car station. Better get the deal on carnations.
Big ass on her butt like a bubble. Ass so big you can see it from the Hubble. Hey, Georgia O'Keeffe, not so subtle. My mind is incredibly troubled.
Lilies, peonies, dahlias, hydrangeas, orchids are the portions of nature.
I just dropped a certified banger like Mary did into that manger. Every rose has its thorn. Let me hear you in the back now. Every rose has its thorn. One more time for me, Memphis. Every rose has its thorn. And one more thing before I go. All these hoes bout to mourn. Because the song is over.
Wow.
Thank you.
You put some sauce on that.
I did, yeah. I was inspired. I'm gonna go back to intellectual Maxwell.
Okay. I hate when it's too much for gas at the car station.
That little ditty was called Rap Bouquet, by the way. I think of it as a rapper's delight for the modern...
For the nose.
Yes, rapper's delight for the nose.
Because Rapper's Delight, there's a lot of food content in that song. I don't know how well you know the
Not
the
that
words.
well. Are you thinking of Turkish Delight?
No.
There's a lot of food content in that
I'm thinking
food.
about Rapper's Delight.
Okay.
There's like a whole part
Wait.
of the song.
Are you thinking of rappers? Of food rappers?
No.
There's a lot of food content inside of those.
That's true. There's a whole part of the song where he and I could be misremembering, but he basically kind of gets roped into going over to his friend's house for dinner.
Okay.
But the food is horrible and he just wants to get out of there.
Dun 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 dun.
Oh.
Am I right?
Yeah. It's pretty much that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of workshopping for myself some rap names.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
I just feel like I could be totally wrong.
About Rapper's Delight?
I feel very confident
Okay.
in that. But I was thinking earlier that I've made so many statements that are just not being fact checked at all. That
Yeah,
maybe
that's fine.
there should be
Come on. What is it? We're not.
I know.
Get your news from us.
But I told that whole Picasso story, which I was like, I heard that in a movie.
I had never heard that before.
I think it's in a movie. I don't think
Okay.
it's real, but I thought maybe you also knew it was from a movie.
Is it in Midnight in Paris or something?
I haven't seen
don't
that,
know.
so
Picasso.
we don't know what we're
I've
talking
never
about.
seen that movie.
I haven't either. But I just had to just say that I don't know if anything I ever say is true. So
You don't need to say that.
okay.
Hey, I'll make a statement.
Everything I say.
Everything
is
we say is completely true
Okay,
and
great.
accurate, and I'm not worried about it. I'm very comfortable being yelled at online.
Yeah,
or corrected.
you like to troll.
It don't bug me none.
All right. So what are your rapper names?
Well, the best one I came up with is Hoodford Reserve.
Oh my god, that's really good.
Thanks.
The flower black dahlias. Mm-hmm. It could be white dahlia.
White Dahlia. That's pretty good. Yeah, you were just saying that you tend to think that white rappers are kind of better.
Oh my god. I hate it when you say stuff like that. I hate it when you do that just with our friends.
Yeah. You always say it's so intellectual.
Oh my god. What was that one song that we were talking about not that long ago?
You were probably, the song we were listening to in the car, and you're like, why does it always have to be about guns and
No,
drugs and
the one
women
song-
bouncing their big butts on
Oh my
at
gosh.
the club?
Well, you're one to talk. You got their
Hey,
butt from the Hubble.
I'm a rapper's rapper.
Yeah.
You know?
What
I
is
don't do that. I don't do that heady shit. I'm not Logic.
What was that one song that we just were talking about where he goes on that whole rant? It starts off
Oh, Hobson.
Yeah.
Yellow Mind of Hobson 5. Yeah. The most reactionary
It was crazy,
song
yeah.
ever. Yeah. My uncle.
He's my favorite rapper.
That's awful. My uncle showed me that song and he was like, I know you guys like rap. This is
Oh
one with
my
a pretty good
gosh.
message in it. It's
Hello,
like
fellow teenagers.
totally. Yeah. And at the time we were like, yeah, this is it, because we're in church and we're like, this is got a beat and swag and a good message.
It's the message.
And then we just went back to listening immediately to Kendrick Lamar's like Section 80 mixtape.
Yeah, the message of the ill mind of Hobson gets really misogynistic really fast.
Yeah, I feel like there's like other stuff in it. It's a real conservative, like pull your pants up, pull yourself up by
Yeah.
the bootstraps, like
It was like funny because like
get a job and
yeah, hearing it for the first time as an adult, it starts off like stay in school, education is important. It's like, okay, it's
Yeah,
like kind of
whatever,
corny,
yeah.
but whatever.
Yeah,
But
sure.
then it's like, and there are these women out there. It's like, and they're wearing these clothes that are too short. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. It shocked me because I showed it to you like being like, this was a cool rap that my uncle showed me. I hadn't really listened to it in a long time.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be corny, but I did
Yeah.
not know that it was like going to be like more offensive than like rap written to be offensive.
Yeah.
Because like rap written to be offensive is usually somebody kind of goofing, and he's being serious.
Yeah.
All right. Can we pivot into our segments?
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's get going.
Okay, Emily,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of everything that has been going on surrounding the noise around our podcast, debates over my masculinity, maybe yours too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see
I
everything.
wear
I don't
my
hear every
masculinity on my
conversation.
sleeve.
Yeah, I wear mine on from my neck up. A bird just flew into our window so hard.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It just hit our window and then flew out this
Oh my
way.
god. Okay.
That was crazy.
Wow.
Oh man, he hit that thing really hard.
Yeah.
He was fine though. He flew.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. All right. So this is on writing
Right.
advice. I went to writing advice, and people needed flower-based writing advice.
Oh yeah.
This says, "What are flowers or plants that symbolize masculinity?" Just simple like that. I don't know if a question like this is allowed, but I would like to know, since as a hobbyist who likes to make and write
OCs.
OCs. Oh, thank
Original
you.
characters.
This is so my third time reading this because I read it when I put it in the slide, and every single time I thought it said orcs. And really enjoy his symbolism. It would be nice to know, since there is plenty of plants that represent femininity and aspects of that, what would it be like for masculinity and aspects of it?
Okay. Well, I think flowers are plants that symbolize masculinity. You've got the banana.
Yeah, I want to keep this flowers,
Oh, okay.
if you don't mind.
Okay, well, that
So-
throws all my other vegetables out
Well,
the
I'm
window.
very sorry. But yeah, do you think of? I would agree that flowers are a typically feminine symbol.
Yeah, I think so, but I also definitely think that men also enjoy getting flowers. And
Definitely, but
symbolically,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Flowers often, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of metaphors that compare women to flowers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like the implication of like being beautiful but delicate, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, I think flowers in general are considered feminine.
I would say overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, like you said, that doesn't mean that only women like flowers, but they are a feminine symbol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this person wants to know what a masculine flower would be or be like. Are there any masculine flowers?
There's the Neptune's gold.
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, they're like cool. They're kind of like spiky.
They're spiky.
You know, which
Yeah.
I feel like.
They're blue. They're not one of these colors
Mm-hmm.
like pink or purple.
Well, I think they're kind of purple too.
They're kind of purple.
But yes, I think of that as being a flower that could be masculine.
Yep.
You know,
For sure. Maybe like a black rose. Goth.
something tactical.
Goth masculine. A
Camo,
gunmetal rose.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, this kind of gets me into my suggestions here.
Oh, okay.
So I put a few together for
Great.
this guy. Number 1, the flowers on Swamp Thing's
Mm-hmm.
forearm muscles.
Yes.
So we've discussed Swamp Thing in the past on the show. Very masculine, very manly figure. A big burly guy made of the swamp with glowing red eyes. Yields the power of the swamp. and he has some flowers growing on his forearm.
Yeah.
So I think that those would be a good example of masculine flowers.
Sure. I mean, they're growing on a man.
They're growing on ostensibly a man. They're growing on not so much a man as a collection of like chemically altered algae that ate a man and after a lab explosion and absorbed his memories and then reformed themselves because they thought they were a man into a humanoid-like swamp creature. But definitely manly.
Yeah.
Almost in the greatest sense of the word, because it's very much like a man. It's as much like a man as a swamp could be.
Right.
So that was my first suggestion.
That's a pretty good one.
Thank you. Here's my second suggestion here is a meat flour.
Oh my god.
So this is a beef jerky flour made by the Manly Man Meat Company.
That is so disgusting.
What's gross about this?
It's a flour made out of like pepperoni or salami.
Yeah, it's a beef jerky flour. It is. So you got a nice stem of beef jerky, probably very nice and flavorful. You can get these as an 8 or a dozen. So I would say that this, if you're looking to write this into your story or your poem, this is a good flour that symbolizes masculinity as a meat flour.
Oh my gosh, this is like Father's Day core. Like,
Absolutely.
Don't know what to get your dad? How about a bouquet of bacon?
Definitely. And it's sold by the Manly Man Company.
That's how you know it's manly.
Exactly. And I just have some specs on this in case anybody's interested. It's only $94 for a dozen
My god.
beef jerky flours.
Oh, they have flavors.
Yeah, you can get mixed, original, teriyaki, or hot.
Wow.
So that's a little bit exciting.
It has
the
great
step
reviews.
down to 8 stems is still $74.
Wow.
Yeah, but 5,000 people think that these meat flours are worth about $10 each. Or $8
This is like
each.
so much grosser than just like getting someone a bunch of beef jerky. Like,
Yeah.
It's so much worse than that.
I totally agree.
Oh,
You should just get
man.
your dad a bunch of beef jerky.
How much-
Get him $94 worth of like just.
Oh my gosh.
And you could even get another man. Like I'm sure there's like
Manly Man
raw,
beef jerky.
yeah, raw. Like I made this in my garage out of a deer I hunted beef jerky.
Can I also say
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'm not going to say just women, but society has perfected the art of a charcuterie rose. You can
Yeah,
see a beautiful flower made out of meat on a charcuterie board, and it looks so much better than that.
I will say that I did see some of those in the Google Images search that led me to this, and this one just struck me as being more manly.
Because it's got no bells and whistles.
It's got no bells and whistles, and the stems almost look like cigars. If you didn't even see the
Yeah.
top, this could be a cup of cigars.
When I see this, I think the stem is beef jerky and
Yeah.
the petals are salami.
Something like that, yeah.
That
Some like
sounds
thick
gross.
cut cured meat.
Ugh,
Yeah.
man. Okay.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to thank you for showing me
this
this.
is what we'll call like some sort of Freudian abject horror that you're having to the masculine.
And maybe in that way, that makes it even more masculine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what is the masculine but the antithesis of the feminine?
Right.
Now here's another one.
Oh.
So this says "Love you, Dad" on the pot.
Aw.
And then these are flowers made out of bullets that have been
Oh.
fired at something and then split open in a floral shape.
I thought it was just like metalwork, and I thought it looked really cool, but of course it's made of bullets.
Yes. Now I will say, this is actually it is fairly cool.
It does look pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like
it's-
at least
it's
it's got some
interesting.
artistry to it.
For sure. And this pot is great. As you can see, it's got a gun on the pot, like almost like a watermark of a gun.
Oh my god, I didn't
the
notice
pot.
that.
Of
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, and so these are high caliber rounds that exploded on impact in such a way that it made them look like a flower.
There's probably an art to that.
I'm sure that there is, but I feel like they probably have some sort of machine that like lines it up if they're producing this en masse. But I honestly
If
feel like
this
this is
is-
more of an Etsy shop type idea. So
If
this
this
guy
is
might
what
be shooting a wall or something.
One guy did for his dad, I think it's
That
cool.
would be cool.
If this
I'm
is
with
a
ya.
product you buy,
Yeah,
it's less cool.
I agree. And I think it's a product that you buy,
Yeah.
is my guess. Although the photograph of it,
It doesn't look
it looks like it's on somebody's driveway.
yeah.
It looks like they might have fired the bullets right at the ground right there. So, and then there's also this flower. Anyway, so moving on.
Is that a pitcher plant?
It's some sort of Cambodian plant actually, and people keep picking them for pictures, and then Cambodia is mad about it because they're getting endangered,
Yeah.
and they're also carnivorous, and so they're like needed
Yeah.
for like population control of insects and such.
I think it might be like a pitcher plant where it's
Yeah.
like it has like a liquid inside that
Hmm?
bugs get in and die in there and it eats the bugs.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, those, if you could incorporate those are fairly masculine, and that goes back to your kind of original point
That's
about
so
a
true.
banana.
They should make one of those made out of meat.
Should. Yeah.
Put these together, you have
Where
the
was
perfect,
God?
Put these together, you have the perfect manly bouquet. Mm-hmm. Father's Day is only a couple months away.
Exactly.
You can
yeah.
start prepping now.
Send your dad a meat version of this flower. He'd love it.
Start shooting bullets at your driveway now. That way you can get good at it.
Yeah.
Cure your meat now.
And start carving it to look like a Cambodian carnivorous pitcher plant. So I'm going to jump over to writing forums.
Okay.
So this is our first kind of non-Reddit, non-Quora forum poll. Which
there
is
are other
exciting.
forums?
Exactly. And writing forums is one that you have to like have an account to even be able to see the questions.
It's gate kept.
It's gate kept, which is good. Honestly, the writing on there is way better, which
Yeah.
is pretty, which makes sense. But this person says, can you read that?
Yeah, I can read
Her
that.
name?
Oh, I thought you were doing an accent.
No.
Like a Transylvania. Ivavini Linova.
So Ivavili Nova says, I would love to see flowers through your eyes. You can write whatever you want with about them. You can make them a fantasy flower that contains some kind of power. You can make them flowers to express some kind of emotion. You can write whatever you want. Have fun. Here's my attempt. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty. My mouth was sore and I could barely open my eyes and see anything in the dark. It goes on for a long time after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, but that's her beginning right there, which is relevant to
Okay.
what we'll have moving forward. So I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty. My mouth was sore and I could barely open my eyes and see anything in the dark. Very straightforward beginning to a story, I would say. Nothing wrong there. This person says, hello, I am new to this forum, so please forgive me in your heart and mind if I mess up my first proper post. I am uncertain whether to criticize your writing and then write a short story or write a short story about flowers. I like you imagination, but it is my opinion you could have wrote something better. Example, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty. I would have personally wrote, I awoke during the night, my mouth feeling drier than an arid land.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, I won't criticize any more of it. I am still unsure how this forum works.
Okay. I forgive them in my mind, but not my heart.
I think that it is funny. This is what I would say is the opposite of good writing advice. This is
Yeah.
completely bad writing advice. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty is the best way to possibly say that because it is the simplest
Yeah.
and most effective and just delivers the information. And I awoke during the night, my mouth feeling drier than an arid land, is a bad sentence. That sounds like
Yeah.
it's trying very, very hard. And I think that is a good lesson in what not to do there. And I think it's kind of funny that it's being posed as a lesson in what to do.
It makes you aware of the writing in a bad way.
Yes, absolutely. This is what I've kind of preached against in prose since
Yeah.
day one and bothers me probably more than anything. If you read any great author, you never feel like they're trying to do anything. If you read, all of the authors I really tend to gravitate toward, who I'm sure I've talked about all of them, but Elmore Leonard and Paul Auster and even like Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck. Everything that you read by them is just like, here's the information, and it feels so simple and so easy to read, but they're still doing plenty literarily. They're still doing plenty with language, but it never feels like they're like trying to twist and turn and we'll go ooh, and
Yeah.
I'm so original. I have such an original way of describing something very, very basic. If something's basic, then just describe it. That's easy.
Yeah.
It makes your job really easy.
Yeah.
And then when you get to something that's difficult to describe and you want to communicate that eloquently to a reader, then it's your job to simplify their understanding or direct their understanding of that by using inventive language.
Or you can do the, what's that horror author? It's indescribable.
Yes, H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah. H.P. Lovecraft would say something like, it was such a crazy looking thing that nobody could even try to describe it.
And you probably wouldn't even get it if I tried, so.
And then he'd go, but basically it was shiny and iridescent and it looked like a crab and a fish mixed together and it was from outer space and it was black and white at the same time.
Wow.
And then you're like, yeah, it sounds difficult for me to picture.
Yeah.
I like that as an idea because what he was trying to do was paint a picture that this was so from another dimension or planet or something that it was like imperceptible to humans, like the light reflecting off of it in some way. But yeah, that was a funny move that he would pull a lot. It's being like, you can yeah,
That's
don't even
pretty good.
try. So anyway, this is the story by this person. They wrote a story called Flowers.
Okay.
Flowers was the largest retailer in the world of flowers. Everybody knew the brand, and flowers became the world's new cocaine.
Oh.
Every house had flowers. There wasn't a single home without a hanging basket. It was like the whole world had become hypnotized with flowers. It was a nice bright morning in June, and today I had to deliver several bunches of roses. I was quite excited this morning because normally I was just stuck behind the florist counter all day long, serving flowers to the public. Today was quite a special day because I was traveling to a mansion. Being brought up in a poor household, I had never been in a mansion before. I'd awoke early, already had breakfast, and put on my finest clothes as not to feel ashamed when suddenly there was a knock at the door within a knock emoji, and that's where it ends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this the person that gave that advice?
Yes,
What I love is like flowers became the world's new cocaine.
I love that.
Every single house had cocaine. There wasn't a single home without a hanging basket of cocaine. You know what I mean? Like
and
not
I was
every
on
home
my
has
way to the
cocaine
nicest
right now.
mansion, and I heard a knock at the door.
It's just funny, like it's not like the world's new like Coca-Cola where people or coffee
Sure.
where everyday people are getting it. It's like
It's their new cocaine.
yeah.
Well, I think the idea is that they became completely addictive, so addictive
Yeah.
that everybody had it. Like whatever the drug is in the a Scanner Darkly or something like that. It's like a huge percentage of
Yeah.
the population has become. I don't think that I'm kind of probably for the better, but they didn't really take their own advice.
They said the word awoke.
They do say awoke, but I feel like Flowers was the largest retailer in the world of flowers. Like if they were to critique that sentence, they would be like, Flowers was a retailer in the world larger than the Roman Empire at the height of its height. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good story by them. And you might be wondering who wrote this.
I am.
Well, they were banned
Oh.
1 week after they joined.
Oh my god. That's so
They
dramatic.
joined in November, this past November.
Oh my God.
They were on for 8 days and they got banned.
Wow.
And I did check it. It's not just like a picture that says banned, like a banned book
Yeah.
statement or something. They were banned.
Wow. That's so funny.
They sent 70 messages
In
a
that
week.
1 week. That's crazy.
I do feel bad for them if they're really just trying to do their best
Seed
and
of
messed
thought.
up somewhere. Seed of Thought got banned.
Wow.
Yeah, quite sad and tragic. Here onto some more actual advice.
Okay.
This is back again to writing advice from Reddit. I like to have a protagonist who is cheerful, so it contrasts better with the cruelty of the poem's meaning. However, I also like to make insincere analogies, which makes the whole poem seem a bit too innocent, even though I'm trying to make it disturbing. Analogies include things like fruits, flowers, animals, and inanimate objects. This is one aspect of my writing that I don't want to throw away. So how can I make it more disturbing despite this?
Okay.
So this is a big ask, I feel like, here. They want a lot. They have a cheerful protagonist, but a poem that highlights cruelty. They want to include some, and we'll stick to flowers here since that's the theme of the week, some floral analogies that allow their protagonist to remain cheerful but feel disturbing. Go
They're
ahead.
doing it with their username.
Silly battle. Wow, that's so true. So what they're looking for, I think, here, and I think that this is a great use of metaphor. And I think that metaphor has its most obvious use, which is kind of demonstrating something to the reader by comparison or analogy, or simile, however you want to categorize your metaphor, and being illustrative to the reader. Like I've talked about that before. The purpose of a metaphor is to illuminate, not to obscure, not to like impress you as a author who's making this comparison, allowing you to like describe flowery or interesting stuff that's not in your scene, but to just really make the reader understand what you're trying to say by comparing it to something relatable to that reader. So, if I say the moon looked like a tortilla, then like you have a very clear idea of what a tortilla looks like, right? Like we've all seen a tortilla. So maybe to you that's very like illustrative and says a lot. But if I say like the moon shone like the sand under the ocean water, like, or something like that, then you're like, well, I'm more familiar with just the moon than I am with sand underwater and how it shines. And so at that point, that's just the author trying to just kind of shoehorn some writing-y stuff in there. It's not really helping the image that they're really trying to paint. And so that's one use of metaphor, is to illustrate something to the reader. But the other use is that metaphors can often reveal something about the character making the comparison. So if this is told from the narrator's perspective and they're making a particular point with a metaphor, or if they're making some sort of comparison, the comparison they're making is sort of a window into their mind. Like with the tortilla one, like if I'm like, the moon's looking like a tortilla right now, that might tip you off that I'm hungry.
Right.
That's a very basic example, and that might be reading too far into it. But that's just how it can allow a window into my thoughts. Like, why does my brain go to tortilla instead of something else, And my brain went to tortilla because we just bought tortillas and I ate a quesadilla yesterday, So it does point towards something going on in my head, some connection that I'm making. And so I wrote a few of these kind of in this person's lane here. Is this making sense to you? Okay, cool. It's coherent. Makes sense in my head. So here's the first one. I turned her rosy pink with the back of my hand. So what do you think when you read this?
Like, what do I think happened?
Not necessarily. Just how does it make you feel?
It makes me feel unsettled.
Yeah. I think that's a great reaction to this. I think, what it means is kind of obvious. Somebody struck somebody. The back of your hand kind of indicates that it was like some sort of like probably man to woman, maybe domestic altercation, but the idea that somebody would commit this act of violence that already to us is gut-wrenching, but then in them, they're thinking of a rose in that moment, or a soft and colorful kind of image comes to their mind when they see the color that they've turned somebody, like that they can kind of hold both an image of beauty in their mind while committing this act of violence. It's almost worse than if they were like, I turned her blood red or something like that.
Yeah, because that also like almost implies some emotion. Yeah. Like it was done in the heat of the moment, or they were really angry and like the blood red, but this is like kind of like that like almost cherubic like color choice. Yeah. That makes you feel like it's almost done in like they are removed enough from the emotions of this to observe it as rosy pink.
Exactly. Or even like enjoy it, the color, And so I don't know, I won't say worse, but definitely different. Like it's a different sort of evil going on here. Yeah. One is more straightforward and direct, and then one is indirect. It's like the mood doesn't match the actions, but the actions are what they are. So that says something about the person saying this sentence.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
So here's another one. I watched him shrivel over the next 6 months like a clipped begonia. So to me, this elicits it's very grim. Or I'll get your reaction first, I suppose, since I...
Well, I agree. Yeah. It is grim. It kind of gives me the feeling like again, like they're removed enough to like see it like this, you know?
Sure.
And something that comes to my mind too is like when you like clip a flower, you kind of like have it on display and you observe it. And it almost gives the impression that this person has like they are observing this happen to the other person, almost like a power differential, like the gardener has to the flower. Like, do
Yeah.
they have power over this other person?
It's interesting, that dynamic of power, because like once you clip a flower, you're kind of powerless to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So in a way, this person knows there's nothing that they can do, but at the same time, they can observe and remain healthy while this other person's health deteriorates. But the slow violence of some sort of, you know, loss of health, kind of being compared to beauty in this way is also like a little bit sinister. Even if this person's not sinister, the fact that this elicits comparisons to a flower
Yeah.
in their mind.
Something else that stands out to me is like this isn't like a totally unfamiliar metaphor where it's like someone's beauty fades, like a
Sure.
flower that is like wilting or something.
Right.
But shrivel like a begonia.
Yes.
Like that has a very different.
It does,
You
because
know?
when I originally wrote this, I had wither as the word, and I was like, wither is like a much gentler word. It's the
Totally.
way a flower naturally goes. But you're watching this person shrivel up,
Yeah.
which is a very kind of violent, kind of creepy
Yeah,
word. And you're
totally.
thinking of a flower.
I think that's why, and I didn't realize it, but I think that word choice is also why I feel like the person saying this has something to do with it. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah, no,
mean?
totally.
Which
Yeah.
like they probably don't, but like that's why it strikes me as like a little bit more sinister than just like, you know.
Yeah, it
aging.
seems like divorced.
Yeah.
Like they have a certain coldness to them to be able to make this comparison, similar to the last one. But it's also not as harsh as the last one. They're removed from the situation, and these are just their thoughts, and that way it provides a certain level of honesty to them too. You
Yeah.
know, they're giving a reaction that we wouldn't think of as being necessarily common. Maybe it's not wrong or the way that we'd like to think that we would think, but it's the way that this person's thinking. So you don't need to be able to put your finger on exactly if they're good or bad,
Totally.
but that's the sort of like window into somebody's mind that like writing and metaphor can do, that a straight up description of this person's character could not quite do. And then this is the last one here. The flames turned a once barren plain into a field of windswept red and yellow poppies. This one's a little bit longer. So this does function, I think, fairly well on both levels, in the way that it does kind of create an image in your mind. Like, I haven't ever seen a fire over, a large plain, but I have seen a field of red and yellow poppies, and I can kind of get that image in my mind. But then again, it's also, whoever is writing this or thinking it, whatever character is thinking it, is seeing an event of destruction in it seeing beauty.
Yeah.
I think that also kind of, if this is coming from a narrator's perspective, or kind of even if this is written in the third person, but you understand it to be from a character's perspective, it will say about that character that they're sort of unbothered by this destructive nature. They're maybe even in favor of this destructive nature, or they maybe even have a sort of more almost like Buddhistic view,
Yeah.
like this is happening. There is
Yeah.
a certain level of beauty to this happening if it's a natural thing.
This
right?
one I feel like is the closest to what the original post was referencing.
Sure. Yeah, because this is probably there's a darkness here, but there's also, a positivity to the person saying it, where the others, maybe they're more sinister.
Yeah, and maybe it's also because it's like about not a person, that it makes me think like this person might, like the narrator might just be more optimistic, or like kind of like the original post was saying, like have a cheerful outlook, whereas the others, they don't feel optimistic or cheerful because it's about violence being done to another person, or
For
like
sure.
someone, losing their health.
Yeah,
know?
definitely. So for this person's specific question, this would
yeah,
be probably the
I think
best
so.
example I could give. But to illustrate my
Yes,
other point, I
yeah.
think those work. Those other ones work fairly
It's
well.
interesting.
Yeah. So definitely think about that next time you're making metaphors. Like if somebody's getting hurt, like the way that they are getting hurt, the way that your narrator describes it says something about your narrator.
Yeah.
If your narrator is cooking food, the way that they describe the falling of the ingredients into the thing, if you make a metaphor there, says something about them. You know, if it to be obvious, if you're like a baby falling into a a cauldron, then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, they're an evil witch.
Yeah.
But if it's something even more like it fell into their like and like a earring into the bathtub, it's like, why are they thinking about an earring going into the bathtub? Like where is their mind?
Yeah.
What have they witnessed maybe
this a
recently?
memory?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emily, I want to move on here to a few photographs. Since it's Flower Week, we just published some beautiful flower photos in our first
These
issue.
look familiar.
Yes, these are Ryan LaRue's photos. All three of his were of flowers. They're all unbelievable. Like, they really, really are. Ryan is an incredibly, incredibly gifted photographer. He also is somebody who shoots exclusively film and develops all of his own stuff and scans all of his own stuff. His work has an unbelievable, like, simultaneous softness and crispness to it, and it's his photos are all insanely dynamic because they're soft but very sharp where they're sharp, and also all contain both a certain coolness and a certain warmth.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I know Ryan, and he's had multiple setups, multiple scanners, multiple chemicals, multiple methods of doing this, and he always seems to achieve a very similar look in all of his photos. And I know that he batch scans all of his stuff too, so he's not sitting there in Lightroom all editing them to get a certain look. It's just however his natural, like when he's doing his presets or whatever, brings all of his photos out. I'm jealous of them so often. I wish I could achieve something like this, and I'll go into some detail here. Obviously the subject being that flower right in the middle is beautiful. It feels, he keeps his aperture so nice and wide that you get a beautiful background blur. You can see that stem arcing up in the back there, almost disappearing where there's no nodes along it into the sky. And it almost makes it feel like the subject flower is like cut out and put onto a backdrop. Like, that's the level of sharpness that he gets. Something that also drives me crazy is he's said to me before, because I talk about it taking me forever to manual focus something and like line it up through like the viewfinder of one of those old DSLR film cameras. And I was like, how do you do it? And he's like, I just trust my eye. And I'm like, that makes me so mad, man. I need like focus peaking on my digital camera.
This is such
or I
a
feel
beautiful photo. And something else interesting about it is I feel like this is a hibiscus, but like the bush is so purple. Like,
yeah.
They're normally green.
Yeah, I don't know where he took this or if that bush is actually purple.
Maybe it's not a hibiscus.
It looks like a hibiscus flower, but I don't think that it's a hibiscus plant.
No, I
it's
thought
a little
that,
too stemmy.
Yeah, it's really stemmy, and I also like it has like the color pattern, but if you look in the center, that's not like the like long
Yeah,
thing.
for sure. I'm actually not sure what kind of flower this is. Yeah, and just his stuff has like a shine to it. It's got such an unbelievable depth. It pisses me off. It's so good. Well, I'll go down to his other one so we can see it. And
this was my favorite of the collection that you published.
Yeah, this is great. It's highlighting it again right there, how crisp that front flower is and how beautifully blurred the one in the back is. The composition, like the balance of the white is amazing in this photo.
It looks like a little berry or a bud
berry
in the
or
background.
or like a bud, yeah. Something here too is like there's this great golden warmth to the center of this flower, but his shadows, like where are the shadows of his highlights, I guess that's the best way that I can put it. The whites, the shadows in his whites always have this blue tinge to them.
It looks cool.
It looks cool, and I think it's that great contrast that he gets between cool and warmth in different parts of the same photograph that really make his stuff pop.
Yeah. This is gorgeous. It looks like you could like just touch how and like feel that softness of that flower. This actually reminds me, I know you don't pair up the feature pieces in this way.
Yeah.
But this reminds me a lot of the Billet Poppy story. Because in that story, like one of the things that they selected for with those poppies was like softness, because like people end up curling up and sleeping.
That's
in them.
right. Yeah, totally.
This totally looks like something you'd want to curl up and sleep
For
in,
sure.
you know?
It's really interesting. This is all three of these photos are on Portra 400. They're also all shot with a 50 millimeter Minolta lens, and I think it's a 1.4, so you can get that really shallow depth that allows that really nice smooth background blur. And then Kodak Portra, Kodak kind of has fairly warm film stocks overall, but I feel like Portra 400 I always think of as being their coolest of their line. And so I think that lends itself, but I just know that if he shot this on like anything else, he would kind of achieve the same effect. But yeah, the texture of it is really fantastic. And then here's his last one here of the submission.
That's so gorgeous.
This one is really phenomenal too. Something about his focal point being so shallow, like his focal plane is so shallow, and you have so much that is in front of it that's out of focus, and behind it that's out of focus, and then the stuff in the middle feels so crisp, but it gives the whole image this sort of swirling softness. You see down in that bottom right corner the way that everything feels like it's almost sloping. And then just this beautiful kind of blending, and then where it is crisp popping, so it doesn't feel out of focus, even though most of the pixels or grains or whatever are not in focus, but there's such a beauty to that, and it creates again just such a depth to this photo.
This is just really gorgeous.
It really is. And the pinks are nice and warm, and the sky is like nice and cool gray. I also love, like, if you were to say what is the subject of this, or what is this a photo of, you would probably say it's a photo of the lamp.
I'd say the flowers.
I would think so too, but like, if I guess in my mind I'm just thinking, like, if you were describing this photo versus another one of this tree that he took, like, that's kind of what adds and gives this, because if that was removed, then it would feel maybe a little bit basic, you know?
This is more interesting because it's like, well, I think this is also probably just about whatever this place is, but the fact that like that lamp is in the middle of all these flowers, it gives it kind of an enchanted feeling.
Absolutely.
Versus like just a picture of a lamp where it's like I'm in a city, or just the flowers where it's like maybe he like got inside of a bush to take this picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Just it's like it's busy in a way that feels graceful. Yeah. And just like well assembled and dynamic.
It's a good word for it, graceful.
Yeah. I think that's a good word for all of his photos, honestly.
And I see what you mean about like the consistency in like kind of tone, like both color and feeling wise between his photos, because like it almost feels like these could have all been taken on the same walk.
Sure.
But they very well could be from 3 totally different places.
I think they might be.
Yeah.
I think that these are certainly from 3 different of his posts. I'm not sure if that means from 3 different rolls of film, or
but it totally maintains that kind of like
his stuff is his stuff.
Yeah, it's like gentle, kind of cool toned without feeling desaturated.
Definitely. Yeah, he's got wonderful color saturation on here. I mean, when you talk about like things that are people are always kind of looking for high saturation, low contrast, and I feel like he's got such a good balance of that, because he leaves just enough contrast in there to allow his stuff to pop. Like over here, it's not like blacked out harshly, but the way that the shadows fall off on the left side and then that bottom left hand corner there, it feels black in contrast to it. But I think if you were to raise that up, it would feel more like when you truly black something out, it starts to feel very digital. So having a very,
Yeah.
very, very dark gray in those areas.
You have a cool photo kind of like that, which I think maybe it was digital from the Rose Garden, where it's like all the background is almost black because of the.
That's our poetry post. The first time we asked for poetry.
Yeah.
That was an interesting photo because the sun was hitting those flowers. There was like a beam of light hitting those
Yeah.
white flowers exclusively, and so that photo was taken in daylight. But I had to underexpose the photo so much to actually capture the information in those flowers.
It looks so cool though.
Yeah, and it makes them look completely spotlit. So that's not
Yeah.
like one that I like cropped around the flowers and made it black.
Yeah.
It's just one that like the light made everything
Yeah.
behind it appear black because it was reflecting the light so
And
harshly.
was that digital?
Yes, that was digital, but I think that was on my Pentax lens attached to the digital camera.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
Which just does a really good job of capturing all those contours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's some of Ryan's photography.
Nice.
Definitely
Wow.
worth highlighting. I was saying that I want to highlight more of the stuff in the journal.
Totally. I
when
think this was a great
it
way
comes
to
up.
start.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that we want to continue to highlight is good stuff that we like. We
Yes.
goof on some stuff that's silly.
But there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of the heavy lifting. Like you prepared a lot of this stuff.
Let 'em
and
know.
so I found the good poem, which
Yeah.
I'm not the writer of the two of us, but I think I know sometimes.
I like
if a
reading
poem
the
is
stuff that
good.
you find because
Yeah.
I'm also, so particular and really get into my people and kind of tend to read the same thing over and over, that this exposes me to different stuff. So I haven't read this poem before.
So I found this poem. This is by Hanif Abdurrahkib, and it's called How Can Black People Write About Flowers at a Time Like This?
Okay.
He actually has several poems under the same title. And I read a little bit like about the poem, and it was saying that like he was at a reading of like another black poet in like 2018, and a white lady behind him. The poem was about flowers, and a
Did she
white
say this?
yes, a
Whoa,
white lady behind
that's
him
crazy.
said this.
Oh my gosh.
And it really struck him, and
Yeah.
so he wrote several poems under this title.
He wrote a lot of poems called How Can Black People Write About Flowers at a Time Like This?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the whole on the next screenshot, you can read the whole poem at
Nice.
once.
Okay, great. Dear reader, with our heels digging into the good mud at a swamp's edge, you might tell me something about the dandelion and how it is not a flower itself, but a plant made up of several small flowers at its crown. And Lord knows I have been called by what I look like, more than I have been called by what I actually am. And I wish to return the favor for the purpose of this exercise, which, too, is an attempt at fashioning something pretty out of a seed refusing to make anything worthwhile of their burial. Size me up and skip whatever semantics arrive to the tongue first. Say, that boy, he looked like a hollowed-out grandfather clock. He looked like $1 million God with a 2-cent heaven. Like all it takes is one kiss, and before morning, you could scatter his whole mind across a field. That's brilliant.
It's good
That's
stuff.
a really good poem.
Yeah.
That's, I think, my favorite one that you've shown me.
Nice.
Yeah, very obscure. I'd need to like read it and parse for meaning more. But I mean, you've had, I guess, the chance to do that. What do you take from this poem?
Well, I think that there's one pretty like upfront
So
meaning,
good.
right? Like kind of about his experience as a black
Sure.
man. Like I've been called by what I look like more than what I
Definitely.
am. And I think that is an interesting metaphor using also, well, not maybe a metaphor, but an interesting comparison with the dandelion, because it's like a dandelion, it's maybe technically not a flower, but we call it a flower. Sometimes we call it a weed, but like we almost like upgrade it,
Yeah, for sure.
you know? And I feel like kind of he's almost like taking that opposite approach of like, I have been called like other things, like I have been downgraded in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
then also like bringing in all of this other kind of like flower talk, I guess, brings it back up.
Definitely. Something I really like about this too is that he doesn't feel, I think this is kind of a amateurish poet thing to do. is to pick a metaphor and then feel like you have to write it out or stay on
Totally.
theme. Like I kind of did that jokingly in my rap at the beginning, is just keep shoehorning flowers into it, and it ends up being not cohesive. But he's not afraid to leave his flower metaphor and make other comparisons and use other language. And he also doesn't need to, he makes his point with this dandelion and the seeds and what they represent. And then he's able to make these, to talk about grandfather clock, right? Or 2 cent heaven. And then return to it with the scatter across the field. He's not constraining himself with his language by being like, this is the metaphor for this. Like, so unlike prose, in poetry, you can just mix. You have freedom to not mix your metaphors in a way that you lose your message, but to you are sort of unbound by reality or that need for more direct communication, because you're trying to communicate feeling and meaning more than story. And I think that is something that, and that's the part of reading this that reminded me of Terrence Hayes, who I start to sound like somebody who's only ever read one poet. Because
you've read one poet and one author, and it's Terrence Hayes, and then you've read Moby Dick.
Yeah.
That's it.
But that reminds me of it. There is, whenever I read a Terrence Hayes poem, or I mean, there are plenty of poets that do this very well, but you feel like it takes you to very many places without it just like taking your brain and like throwing random stuff at you.
Totally.
It feels very intentional, even if you know that like you're going to need to kind of reread it, which I definitely will for this, to get everything out of it. But it's such a beautiful journey, like all of these different things that it's eliciting in your mind, this image after image, is so beautiful, and it's put together so wonderfully, and with that feeling of authority that you trust that there is meaning behind what could seem random to you.
I also like kind of the rejection almost of the title through the work, where it's like,
yes,
you know what I mean?
I do.
It's like, okay, how can Black people write about flowers at a time like this? It's like, you can write. Okay, how do I like organize my thoughts? Like, there's no obligation for like Black people or any like minority group to only use their art to explain their plight to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, there was like this whole movement hashtag about like Black joy, like watching movies that aren't just about like Black people suffering, but also like Black joy, like not to minimize it by calling it a hashtag, but I can't really say it's a movement.
Sure.
But I feel like this is like kind of like a small version of like, I'm rejecting this title, I'm acknowledging it, but I'm also like going on and like doing my thing.
Absolutely. This is a personal poem. It's not directly addressing completely the issue that it's kind of reporting on here, right?
Yeah.
Which is this woman's idea. And I think that's something that I've thought about in art, and that I've expressed to you, is like, you know, not every piece of representative art is at its most powerful when it's pointing the finger at itself as being representative art. I think, you know, when the idea behind representation ultimately is, yes, to convey maybe something that somebody doesn't typically see to them in a way that ultimately normalizes it to them, or exposes them or gives them empathy toward a perspective that they didn't have before. But I think a lot of the time when something markets itself in a way that is reportedly like an accurate depiction of this, and that's the purpose of it, is to give you that, and then you watch something that doesn't do that, but it just does it. It doesn't say it's doing it.
Totally.
It doesn't,
yes.
you know, report itself to be a commanding like piece of revolutionary this. And a lot of the time that you see that something is, it's being sold to you by somebody major that wants you to show up to the box office or buy the book off of the shelf at Target or, you know, what have you. And these stories, the real ones, you know, that are authentic and pure, are getting told. I think of, you know, if you wanted to kind of, we have a trans piece coming up in our I call it a trans piece because it centers around that issue.
It's about the experience.
It's about the experience coming up that I think articulates the sort of family difficulty that somebody going through an experience where they're not accepted would feel very, very well, you know? And in our last one, we had, you know, love notes from one girl to another that kind of articulates just this love between these two girls, but it's not like, it doesn't treat it as anything other than a regular love story. You know, it's not making a bunch of sapphic descriptions and stuff. It's just like, this is my love to you.
Yeah.
Stated plainly, eloquently, beautifully. And you read it and you go, I feel the love in this poem.
Yeah.
This poem doesn't feel like it was meant to deliver me a message about love or a message about this type of love. But it's truly the essence of it is love.
You know, I think this comes back to what we talk about a lot, which is just like nuance in writing.
For sure.
Because like, I think that sometimes like you walk a fine line of being like, because like someone could hear what you just said and like take it as like, well, you don't want to hear about this, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why sometimes people err on the side of over leaning into that one element of it, like
Right.
making it super like obvious, making it super blatant, not having that nuance, because it's like you celebrate it for choosing to talk about that.
Right.
You know, and
yes.
I'm not specifically being gay. Like this could be anything. Like I feel like like, you know, from like a feminist perspective, I've definitely seen, and this has kind of cooled down a bit, but for a while there's just like blind celebration of things that women do.
Sure.
Including like, we need more female CEOs. We need more women billionaires. And
Right.
it's like, you've lost the plot, mate.
You've lost sight
you know?
of, yeah.
Which I think now I've maybe lost a little bit of sight of where I started, but nuance, creating more impactful stories, and like trusting your audience to come with you, even if you don't like shout it from the start.
Definitely. 100%. It's like, I mean, I think for me, the biggest example is Black Panther. And
Versus...
well, I mean, versus a lot of movies. Like, Disney sold this multi-million-dollar that was, you know, at a time where everything was selling in gobs as being basically a revolutionary piece of art. All they did was gave you something that they had been withholding from you.
Yes.
That should have been an obvious thing to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it seemed like they allowed it through their marketing to appear like a triumph for a community.
Totally.
That they were making this movie. When it's like, yeah, you should have made it, like, it was crazy that none of the superheroes were black.
And do you feel like they did that for women with Captain Marvel?
Absolutely.
And it didn't take.
No, it didn't take. Well, and
As
Captain
much,
Marvel was
yeah.
a worse movie.
Totally.
Because
Because like Black Panther, I liked the movie. Like it was good.
But also, like, it wasn't great, and
No.
it definitely in its messaging was not revolutionary at
No.
all.
Oh my
I would say
gosh.
it's almost very settle down and behave
Totally.
is the message of that movie.
Because what was Michael B. Jordan's character's name?
Killmonger is that dude.
And it was like,
He's right. He's
making points.
He's the right character. I mean, he wants to bring revolution to the streets of
Yeah.
America to fight his oppressors. And he's being told by somebody who, like, holds his head up high and speaks in a very, like, more, like, regal manner that actually the answer is to set up STEM schools in low-income neighborhoods.
Totally.
It's like,
That is like such a like not realistic. Like that's like the corporate answer.
It is the corporate answer.
You
It's
know?
like it's what the Black Panthers would want for America. I mean, they did so much good stuff, like set up good communal institutions and things like that. But also understanding like the militant aspect of any sort of revolution, and the Black Panther, the bad guy in it is a militant revolutionary, not the actual
Sit down and be
oppressors.
quiet, yeah.
Yeah. Not even that faction of people who do recognize, like, you know, T'Challa's not the bad guy in that movie,
Yeah.
right? And I think that movie makes a great point of empathy for Killmonger's character. I think the best thing it does is his death scene when he says, "Bury me in the ocean, like with all of my ancestors who, jumped overboard because they would rather die than be a slave." Brilliant, powerful, striking line. And in that moment, you're like, this is the hero of this film. This person is feeling the most deeply. They have the most sympathetic plight. And in that movie's defense, I do think they give their villain a lot more that make him both like to make him a good and sympathetic character.
He's dimensional.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it a revolutionary piece of media. And for it to be like, this is for people to be praising Marvel for having given like black people their moment. It's like, that was never yours to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, it is crazy that you created an entire cast of superheroes and waited 15 years to have any of them be not white.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they did the same thing with Shang-Chi.
Yes, and that one was bad.
It was bad.
That was bad.
That was really bad.
Oh my gosh.
That was a terrible movie.
I know.
And it also like really retcons a lot of stuff. Like, I've said this before, but like there was Blade. Like, Blade is a Marvel superhero, and those movies were better in my opinion. I really like the first Blade movie a lot. And it wasn't like a big selling point for Blade that like it's like this is an important movie for black people to go see Wesley Snipes fight vampires.
If someone is telling you it's important for you to see this movie, is it the company that's profiting off you seeing that movie that's telling you it's important?
Exactly. If it's like an indie movie that just gets like made and then your friends see it and tell you like, whoa, this had an effect on me.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you know. But if in the marketing campaign for the movie, it feels like it's being pushed by a major production company, then maybe they're like just like leaning on that to exploit their audience and sell their movie.
It really is like them like giving you crumbs and expecting you to be grateful.
100%.
It's
They do it, and they do that like a little bit more and more. And you'll see it now when something, if they do something and it flops, they'll blame it on like the community.
Didn't they just do that with The Little Mermaid? They like blamed its like poor release on
just the country's too racist. To have like the terrible movie that we put out. Like, make a bad movie.
Make the beautiful underwater coral reef gray, and then be upset that people didn't like the movie.
Totally. So,
well,
anyway, I think we've lost the plot a little
I
bit
think
here,
we have too,
but
and I think that now is probably a good time to wrap.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes.
Will you plug us?
I will, of course, plug us.
Thank you.
If you liked this and you want more, go to our Patreon. For more episodes, and we will continue being here on Wednesdays as well.
Absolutely. I want to do another movie watch.
Yeah, those are always
the
fun.
last movie almost made me not want to ever watch another movie ever again, but I would like to do one. So.
And vote on Flower Fight.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Round 2 starts tomorrow.
In Flower Fights, we're all winners.
That's the dang truth right there.